Morning, I hope you're keeping safe and well. St Mark's has a district church council meeting by Zoom shortly, and in an email sent out to remind us of the meeting, Deirdre Parr, the secretary, expressed the hope that we might all find, I quote her, good moments in these strange weeks. And I love that phrase. I wish I'd thought of it myself. And it's prompted me to give thanks for the good moments I am discovering in this time of lockdown. There are less meetings, in fact, to attend, less trips to make to London, no football to watch on telly. So I'm into new things which are giving me good moments. For example, Helen and I are discovering new places to walk just off Grove Road, not a few hundred yards from where we live. I'm discovering the joys of Spotify, giving me unlimited access to music of all kinds and some surprise playlists, which in my case range from the sublime, one of classical music inspired by folk music, very beautiful, to the ridiculous, Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, absolutely wonderful. I'm reading more novels. I'm in the middle of one about the plague, which doesn't sound too cheerful, but actually it's very good to hear how people coped with a pandemic in the 1660s. And I'm doing something which I often tell myself I ought to do, and that is listening to and reading poetry. I've been helped by Radio 4. As you know, it's very good at giving us the news and commenting on it, but I think the producers recognise that that can be very heavy, even wearing. So each day there are moments of poetry led by great actors. Poetry to make us aware of the world's beauty, like William Wordsworth and John Clare. Poetry to make us smile. Pam Ayres is a nice example of that, and a poem by her went round St Mark's recently. And then there's poetry to inspire faith, faith in God, and William Blake is an example of that. And some of the best examples of this sort of poetry are in the Psalms. Words to be said or sung originally in Hebrew, but also very inspiring in English. And the psalm appointed for today is to me a good example of that. It's Psalm 34, verses 1 to 10.
I will extol the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips. My soul will boast in the Lord. Let the afflicted hear and rejoice. Glorify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. This poor man called, and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed are those who take refuge in him. Fear the Lord, you his saints. Those who fear him lack nothing. The lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing.
And thanks to Helen for reading those beautiful words. Throughout they're expressed in what are called couplets. In each verse there's a short sentence, and then the same thought is put across in a different way. Verse 1, for example, I will extol the Lord at all times, first sentence. His praise will always be in my mouth, same thing, but expressed differently. Or verse 3, glorify the Lord with me, let it exalt his name together. And it goes through doing those two sums, couplets. It's a well-known device, but it works in this sort of poetry. And then there are some surprising words. In verse 2, the psalmist refers to boasting in the Lord. That's an odd word to use there. And in verse 5, he talks about those who look to God are radiant, that our faces shine. That's a thought, isn't it? And then suddenly in verse 10, there's a reference to lions. It's worth reading and rereading as beautiful poetry and partly as a support for faith in these challenging times. And that maybe those two things belong together, beautiful poetry and faith. And this was certainly true of the early 17th century poet George Herbert. And one of my good moments this week was to read an article about him in a Catholic magazine. He was born in Wales to a wealthy family, educated in Cambridge, could have achieved anything in life, but he found contentment as a parish priest near Salisbury, where he cared for the needy and wrote devotional verse until he died at the very young age of 39 in 1633. I'll close in a moment with one of his most famous lines, but I can't resist quoting a couple of other verses, which I never heard of until this week. It's one of my good moments. There's one about Easter. How about this? Rise, heart, thy Lord is risen. Sing his praise without delays. I love that line. Who takes thee by the hand, that thou likewise with him mayst rise, that as his death consigned thee to dust, his life may make thee gold and much more just. And then two other lines at the end of a poem in which he's been writing about God's world in its variety of strange delights. He closes, Thou hast given so much to me, give me one thing more, a grateful heart. I love it, and I want to find out more about George Herbert. But let me close with one of his poems that has been sung for 400 years, helping us see God in the mundane things, even the difficult things of life. I hope you'll recognise the words, though we normally sing them rather than read them. Teach me, my God and King, in all things thee to see, and what I do in anything to do it as for thee. For those who look on glass, on it may stay the eye, or if it pleases, through it pass, and then the heaven espy. All may of thee partake, nothing can be so mean which with this tincture, for thy sake, will not grow bright and clean. A servant with this clause makes drudgery divine, who sweeps a room as for thy laws makes that and the action fine. This is the famous stone that turneth all to gold, for that which God doth touch and own cannot for less be told. George Herbert, who gives me encouragement in these challenging times. And I pray that you may have good moments in these strange weeks. Amen.